Hello, everybody. Today is episode 5 of Existential, and we talk about a really, really interesting topic. We talk about the universe and its spatiotemporal qualities, the two pillars of what makes up our physical universe. But before we continue, I want to give a brief thanks to our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership, meaning that you can make money and monetize your work without having a million or even 100,000 listeners. You can start right from zero. Lastly, everything you need to make a podcast is in one centralized location. It's all in one place. There are no excuses not to make a podcast. I know so many people who want to make a podcast and they just are scared of it. Anchor makes it so easy. Anchor removes all the reasons why you should not make a podcast and gives you countless reasons why you should. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, so we're back. So really interesting topic. So today we want to talk about what literally makes up the universe. So space and time. The term spatiotemporal, spatio sounds like obviously space, and temporal means time, right? Like, for example, perhaps in Spanish, tiempo means time. Temporal means time. So spatiotemporal universe, that's where we live. Heliocentric is we live around the sun. Spatiotemporal is space and time. We'll talk about heliocentric a little later. So these are literally the two pillars of our existence. Without one of these things, without one of these pillars, where you walk would not exist, and the time that you live in would not be there. They work seamlessly with one another. So we want to explore a little bit what kind of manifestations come with this balance, right? Come with the reason that we're really in this universe. So number one, which I find really interesting, is to cite an event. When you cite an event, for example, if I asked you to remember a certain point in time, you need a space and time. You need a space and scenery to remember it, and it also had to be in a certain time. For example, if I tell you to remember the birthday party that happened last year, you remember the birthday party, the scenery, and the time last year, right? So it's these two elements of our universe that help us locate and direct certain parts of our universe and where we want to reference to. So this goes really for anything. When you're looking for a word, you look in the dictionary. Whenever you need to be reminded of something, you always look to the source. When you need to be reminded of the birthday party that happened last year, you look no further than the actual source of the universe. What space and time? Where was it and when was it? So interestingly, and we'll get into this topic a little bit later. So if you cite an event based on time, right, you only need, or I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm sorry. If you're doing space, right, if you reference a point, if you reference like a birthday party, right, if you reference something, an event in the term of space, not in the term of time. If you reference something in the term of time, it would be, remember, November 17th of 2016, right? That would be an event reference based on time. But we're talking about space now, and that means that if I tell you, hey, remember the birthday party? During time, you would have to look through literally every XY coordinate in the universe to be able to locate something that happened on the date, right? It's always the opposite. If I'm locating space, there needs to be time involved. As conversely with time, if I'm citing any point in time, I need it to have a certain space, because time is, unlike space, one-dimensional. There are infinite amount of xy coordinates in the universe, but there's only one linear track of time. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so it's a linear. It just literally time is expressed in a linear fashion. It's 1, 2, 3. It's one dimensional, as opposed to space. It is literally unlimited. So that's why it's always easier to cite something during time, because time is one dimensional. If I tell you November 17th of 2016, you immediately, there's one date. There is November 16th here, November 16th there. It's the same universal November 16th, right? As opposed to space, if I tell you, remember the birthday party, right? While you may have a bold recollection of the birthday party, right? Your mind still has to sort to some capacity, because there are a million. Million. Oh my God, there are an infinite amount of XY coordinates in this universe, an infinite amount, right? So that literally can mean anything. So that's why it's always easier to cite something during time. And, these forces, as I said earlier, work seamlessly with one another. You can get into physics and see literally to what extent or how heavily dependent they really work against one another. But, again, it is, how do we balance out the fact that time is is logically easier to what is the time right now? We just gave a logical argument as to why time is the much easier way to reference any event, right? Now here's the opposing argument. So right now time is the one reference point that, because it's one dimensional, easiest to reference. Now what is the opposite? What is the other argument for it? For space, why is space the best way to remember something? Well, we are beings of senses, right? And at our unadulterated core, we are beings of need and beings of desire. And there is a very interesting and eye-opening metaphor given by in Jewish circles, and it goes something like this, right? So when a newborn is born, you'll see his hands are kind of flailing and squeezing the air, but his hands are mostly open, right? And that motion of kind of squeezing with just his fingers kind of like trying to meet his palm, right? That is a universal kind of way you can tell if an infant wants something. When a baby wants something, it kind of squeezes it like, give me, right? That is the infant, right? However, when someone dies, their hands go from open and their hands close. Their hands open when they're little because they're ready to give and they're ready to take and need and be cared for. And when they're adults, once they've gone through everything that they needed to in this world, once they've had their experiences and everything, they've given back. Taking is for kids, giving is for adults. That's why relationships are for adults, not for kids. But anyway, sorry to get off on that little bit of a tangent, right? But the whole point of the metaphor is that at our unadulterated core, that's what I mean. When we're not affected by society, we're not affected by growing up. We're kind of impervious to the normal course of action people go through when they go from being people of need to people who reciprocate and give. Right? We kind of see. I mean, the way we express this desire, right, in our unadulterated core, we are beings of need and desire, and we express this desire through sight, right? Sight mainly. Whatever our primary senses, right? Probably for me, it's got to be sight. We see it and we need it. Sight is how we interpret and affirm our realities. So when we give sight gives something character. Time doesn't. Time is one dimensional. Space and vision gives something character. When I am looking at my notes, or when I'm looking at my computer, I'm interpreting it. I'm looking at the dimensions. It is a multifaceted sight. There are many angles to it, and many places I can actually interpret it. As opposed to time, it's a singular linear, something linear. And it begs the question, what is actually easier to recall? Something that is singular and one-dimensional, one single fact, or something that has many to remember, but you can remember it all based off one thing, right? So, for example, there are probably, I can't even put a number on the amount of angles and shadows or whatever it is that on my computer and right in front of me. That I can't, right? But if you just tell me, if I just remember the mouse pad, I can remember easily computer, right? So which one is easier to recollect? Something that has a singular reference point like time, just November 16th, 2016, or November 17th, right? Or something that has many reference points and all I need is one to remember it, like the mouse pad and I remember my computer, right? So if it's time, it's singular. If it's time, it's a singular reference point, one date. If it's space, there are many elements in that site that allow me to remember it, right? There is, I remember the scenery. I remember the lights. I remember the attraction, the scenery, right? I remember the way the walls. I remember the lighting. I remember the noise. I remember the sound. I remember the feeling of it, right? There's a visual. This is why, we repeat memories through their visual counterparts. We give character and we understand and interpret our reality through sight and through scenery. So when we talk, so whenever I ask you about something, right, I always ask you to visualize the counterpart, right? And we would think that the lesser there is to remember, the easier it's going to be to remember. Well, unfortunately, clearly that is an incorrect idea, because if I did, right, if I asked you to remember November 16th, right, you're not a robot, you can't immediately flash back to a date. Rather, your mind remembers other things. Your mind remembers scenery that made a larger impact, right? What is it called? There's a part in your mind that's going to come to me. There's a part in the mind that opens up when there are emotional events, right? And it's not the time that you remember. It is the angles of the reality that, I see. There are different parts of it. There are the walls, the scenery, the way you remember things, the way you picture something remembers it. So we come to understand from here that something that has many reference points is easier to remember than something that has a singular reference point. The more there is to remember, the easier it is to remember it. Very counterintuitive idea. Now, we also have to understand another point. Really interesting here. But before we dive into something else, I want to give another brief thanks to our sponsor. All right, so we're back. So I want to really introduce a really interesting point. Our mind, this kind of backs up the space argument and not the time argument. The human has a sense for tangibility. People like tangibility. That's how we remember things. That's how we affirm our realities. I know the way a pen feels because I have felt a pen. I know the way eggs taste because I have tasted eggs. I know the way I can type because I have typed before, right? So it's tangibility that helps us remember different things. And each one of these feelings serve as a reference point that brings back, right, the taste of eggs. If I had a blind taste test and I ate eggs, I would know I'm tasting eggs because of the flavor. I know I'm eating eggs because of the flavor, right? That serves as a reference point. So interestingly enough, right, to further the space argument, time is not tangible. We don't have a sense for, we have an internal clock, right? If I asked you to memorize 5 minutes, many of us would almost creepily accurately say when it's 5 minutes. Many people have really good internal clocks, right? But there is no actual physical counterpart in us that has that can sense time, right? Time is not a tangible part of the way we sense things. We don't record reality through time. We record reality through space, right? So here's another intriguing point, right? Time is not tangible, but it is simultaneously purely physical. Two different, pretty much an oxymoron in a way, right? Time, when you think physical, you think something that you can physically interact with, right? So time is very physical, but time is purely physical, right? One of the two super important imperative counterparts to our reality, right? Two necessities that compose the way, just our entire universe, right? So time, in a way, time is purely physical, but time is not tangible. So that removes a dimension. If time was tangible, that would make it two-dimensional. But due to the fact that time is only understandable based on space, that makes it one-dimensional. So for this reason that time is not tangible and the fact that space is, we're always asking, hey, what time is it? Hey, what time is it? Oh, it's noon, right? We're rarely are we seen asking, where are we? Where are we going? What's going on, right? Or what's to describe the scenery, right? Because we don't have a sense for time, we have a sense for scenery. So, that's a really interesting point. And here we're about to conclude off with another topic, but before we do, I want to take a brief sponsor break. All right, so thank you, and we are back. So we see that the world we see as human beings, we see the world as 4D or 7D, right? There are different interpretations, right? 7 directions, right? Up, down, sideways, or left, right. In other words, diagonal. I mean, whatever. 7-dimensional or 4D, right? We can see, feel, touch, right? But the world sees us as one-dimensional. Okay, this is a little bit of a harder topic, right? We see the world as 4D. So from human to world, from internally to external, we perceive the world in a 4D or 7-dimensional fashion. That means we experience everything 7-dimensionally. But due to the fact that we can only be in one place and one time, the world sees us as 1D. Okay, the world is composed of space and time, which is unlimited, but we can only be at one place and one time. This makes us one-dimensional beings, right? We are one-dimensional. The world sees we see the world as 4D. The world sees us as one-dimensional. It's 1D, because we can only be in one place and one time. Now, I don't really know how this is going to come off, but I kind of drew a little bit of something here, right? So I pictured a human looking out and seeing the world, right? Seeing clouds and rain and nature and a bird, right? And everything, right? So we look at the world as 7D, but we are only in one place and one time. We are locked in the present. But I drew a different picture with a globe and depicting a clock behind someone running on the road, right? We can only be in one place and one time, and the world sees us as one-dimensional, right? Now, if you want to say that, that's 239. Never mind. So it is a gift that we are. That many people perceive it. No, I hate being in this moment. I don't want to be right now. I hate my reality right now, right? So if only I can teleport back to blah blah blah, right? If only I can be here. If only I can be there, right? So in a way, there is an understandable desire not to be in the present moment, but it is a gift that we are in the one-dimensional. It is a gift that we are, in a way, locked and only or exclusively present in the present, really. So it is a gift that we are in one dimension, because this cheapens, because had we had the ability to move between different points in time and space. For example, if I told you I wanted to go to 1700 Europe, that would cheapen the present moment to another dimension. It would make it just as significant as 1600 Spain, 1800s China. That would make it equally important. There is no emphasis on the present moment. Then there is nothing that dignifies the present moment over, or would make one choose the present moment over a different point in time. It makes no difference. So now we come to ask, just to close here, because of this, we kind of see the emphasis put on the present moment, because of the fact that we cannot move out of our own one place and a one time, right? Because we cannot evade this one-dimensional nature, we cannot leave, right? We are locked in. Because of this, right, we can learn the importance and the emphasis and the value put onto the present moment, that we cannot leave, right? There is a certain emphasis and there's a certain value put on the present moment that cannot be escaped nor evaded. However, we kind of see that, whoever our creator is, right? God, I believe, but there are many out there who don't, right? That our creator puts emphasis on the present moment, that there is value in the present because of this one-dimensional lock. And with that, we close. So again, thank you very much for listening. All your support helps. Be sure to tune in daily for new episodes of Existential.